Yesterday, I made a video about Bethesda's review policy and how I believe, from a media perspective, that it is bad for consumers. I received a lot of feedback from many who said they don't care, they believe they aren't affected by the policy, and that it might actually be good for the industry. Hey guys, JV here with an updated perspective on Bethesda's review policy. If you're not sure what's going on, you're not in the loop, my video from yesterday is in the description below and that should get you up to speed. The reaction to yesterday's video comes from several different angles and biases, some of which I created myself because of the way that I framed the video. It was my video, so you were only reacting to what I said, and of course some of you brought your own unique perspective to the table, regardless of what I said. Here are a few perspectives that I didn't consider or that I was wrong on. First is the perspective of the uninformed buyer. Some of you do not watch reviews. Watching trailers, reading articles, discussing with peers, whatever it may be, reviews are not included in helping you determine whether or not you want to buy a game. That is your prerogative, and I was wrong to assume that all buyers need reviews to decide whether to buy the game. That is false. At the same time though, if you come from the perspective of the uninformed buyer, someone who doesn't use reviews, then you do have to accept the fact that some people use those reviews. Reviews would not exist if consumers didn't want them. The media would not waste their time reviewing products if it didn't earn them clicks and views. Of course, that is the business perspective. That may not be true for people that are independent and reviewing games just for pleasure, just because they want to share their thoughts. Unfortunately, most smaller reviewers that do this just as a hobby do not get that access. They don't get early copies. So this means that when I refer to the media or reviewers, I'm talking about those businesses, those outlets that do earn money for reviewing games. That's the reality of the industry. So the point here for the uninformed buyer is that some people use reviews to make a purchasing decision. Again, they don't have to, and a lot of you don't, but people certainly do. That's why reviews exist. Next is the perspective of the patient buyer. Many comments on my video were in response to my assumption that gamers are forced to buy games on launch and can't wait until reviews are out. No, gamers do not have to buy games on launch. I was wrong in assuming that that's the case. Not everyone is fortunate enough to afford to buy games on launch, and some choose to wait for reviews whether they have the money to buy the game or not. Patient buyers exist, you guys are certainly right about that. But the reality is that most games sell the most copies right around launch time. For example, many media outlets reported that Fallout 4 sold over 12 million copies, earning $750 million in its first 24 hours. If Fallout maintained that level of sales for even a week, it would have outsold Minecraft in all-time sales. If it maintained for 9 days, Fallout would have become the best-selling game of all time, surpassing Tetris. No, gamers are not forced to buy games on launch, but most of them do historically. If you want to blame anyone for that, blame the millions of dollars businesses put into marketing their games. Hype is a reality and it drives game sales on launch. A lot of you made the point that some gamers choose to wait until reviews come out to buy their games. You are certainly correct. Gamers have that choice and some of them do take it. The issue is that in a situation where the media receives review codes one day before launch, reviewers inevitably rush their reviews for clicks and views because they are also a business. If IGN gets a review code just one day before launch, you bet your ass they're rushing to get that review up as quickly as possible. At the same time, a smaller reviewer is rushing even faster to get their review up before IGN because they are competing. They want to get theirs up first and get more of the clicks and views. I've already talked about this, but the reason I'm bringing it up again is because a lot of you didn't seem to understand the point. There was a lot of talk about Bethesda making a business decision in their own self-interest with this review policy. If that's your point, and you're right about that, then you must also accept the fact that rushed reviews are a business decision made in the self-interest of the media. This is a chain reaction. If Bethesda makes this business decision, then media make their own business decision. So if your intention is to wait for reviews before you buy a game, you are absolutely in that right, but you're still getting rushed reviews that may not accurately represent the game. There are media outlets that are not affected by urgency, and those are a lucky few. For example, Total Biscuit, who's touched on the situation himself, he is not affected because he has a loyal fan base that will watch. A lot of media outlets are not that lucky. The rest that want to stay competitive make a business decision because of review policies like Bethesda's. Who suffers as a result of these business decisions? It's mostly the consumer who relies on reviews, not necessarily all consumers, but those who rely on reviews to make a purchase decision. And in just a second here, I'll explain why I actually believe that this affects all of us, regardless of whether you rely on reviews or not. Third is the perspective of the Bethesda fan, and I know there are a lot of you out there with open minds. You're able to interact with somebody that doesn't agree with you and still have a thoughtful exchange. But at the same time, and this is probably an issue because I've been, covering a Bethesda game over the past year almost exclusively, there are plenty of others who would defend a company like Bethesda even to their own detriment. It's so easy to fall in love with a great game. I do it all the time. I brag about games all the time because there's a lot of them that I love. But you have to remember that Bethesda doesn't love you unconditionally. They love you because you buy their games. If we can agree that this review policy is a business decision, then it was made not in anyone's interest except for Bethesda's. I can't remember what the saying is, but there's an idea out there that no act, no action, no thought, no anything is truly selfless. And that usually applies to people, not companies and businesses. So if you're one of those people out there and you truly believe that this is an act of altruism by Bethesda, you need to step back from your fandom and look at this from a broader perspective. So, if you're still watching this video and you're thinking, you still haven't changed my mind at all, there's nothing new from the previous video, that's probably because I failed to explain the larger impact of this issue. To those who think this might be good for the industry, this is where it gets interesting. I couldn't articulate this point before because I just didn't have the knowledge. I didn't know. But thankfully, Alex, who follows me on Twitter, shared a link to a video by a YouTuber named Tarmac. Tarmac goes very in-depth in this video and explains how Bethesda's review policy pushes this industry, the video games industry, towards a market for lemons. This is an economics concept that was coined by a 1970 paper written by an economist, and you probably haven't heard of it unless you study economics or are interested in this kind of thing. I would have zero clue how to explain this issue without watching Tarmac's video, so big thanks to him for sharing his insight. The general gist of the market for lemons as it relates to Bethesda's review policy is as follows. The overall quality of video games can lower if there is an information asymmetry between consumers and game publishers. Bethesda has encouraged information asymmetry by blocking reviewers from sharing their information with consumers before launch, which forces consumers to use information primarily from Bethesda themselves if they want to buy the game on launch or before reviews are available. Of course, the game is out and in the open and standing for itself after launch. A lot of you mentioned Twitch as the most honest representation of a game, the new form of a review, and in a lot of ways, I agree with that. The biggest hole in this theory as it relates to Bethesda's review policy is the concept of urgency and the question of whether consumers buy games on launch or not. I had a thoughtful exchange with Justin, a viewer on my previous video, who explained that he is in no rush to buy video games. He is willing to wait for reviews, and I'm sure a lot of you watching right now are too. If consumers act rationally in response to this review policy, like Justin for example, then this is a lot less of an issue. The problem is, as we discussed earlier, the vast majority of consumers historically do not wait to buy games. At this point in time, right now, we can't determine if review policies like this will encourage a switch in mainstream consumer behavior. In a perfect world, this is not an issue because consumers would react and then act rationally and make the decision not to buy Bethesda games until they have unbiased information. We don't know what will happen yet, and I guess Dishonored 2 is our next opportunity to observe the consumer behavior with a Bethesda game. The bigger picture here is the domino effect that this policy has on the entire industry. We all know about big publishers misrepresenting their games to the public. Things like showing the first Watch Dogs or Witcher 3 at E3 and then downgrading the final product when it comes out however many years later. Things like No Man's Sky promising multiplayer and other features and then not seeing that upon release. EA, Ubisoft, Activision, Sony, Xbox, and now Bethesda. These massive titans of the industry have misrepresented their games at one point or another. How do we know this? How do we know that these companies misrepresented their games? Gamers talk to each other. Word of mouth is a big thing, but largely this stuff gets big press coverage because of reviews, because of people on Twitch. Because a game stands for what it is only when an unbiased person gets their hands on it and shares their opinion. If you want to sit there and tell me that I'm saying this because I want games early, or that this is my lifeblood, that I'm part of the media and I need reviews to keep making money, you're missing the point, because I'm not a review channel. That is not my lifeblood. That's not why I have as many views or subscribers that I do. That's just not what I've done in the past. I'm not making this video because I want to play games early. I'm making it because Bethesda has adopted a policy that encourages the misrepresentation of games, whether they do it or someone else does. They believe that not having any reviews up for their game before launch is in their best interest in terms of sales, but it's certainly not in yours. Remember, this is a business decision for them. So if you say that you don't care, if you think this doesn't affect you, remember the outrage that you had for No Man's Sky when that happened. Remember the outrage you had for Aliens: Colonial Marines, a game that looked nothing like its trailers when it came out. Bethesda may not participate in this unethical behavior. They may have their own justifications internally, but their policy encourages other companies to adopt a similar policy and continue to misrepresent their games. If I ran a company out there and I didn't have any ethical, moral values, then I would look at this and think, hey, Bethesda's doing well, consumers might get on board with this, let's adopt the same policy. This is like a dangerous piece of legislation that's open-ended and you're just worried about what it could possibly do. This can have a domino effect, and ignoring that is just that, it's ignorant. Here is my overall opinion on the situation. Historically, this is a bad move for the consumer, whether you read reviews or not. Many of you believe that this review policy will trigger a change in consumer behavior, and people will start buying games after launch as a result. For those that rely on reviews, it would also require media outlets to not rush out their opinions and provide a full view of their unbiased opinions and information. I just don't see this happening, but I sure hope you're right. If you want a more in-depth explanation of the market for lemons concept, I highly encourage that you watch Tarmac's video linked in the description below. It's really a fantastic video that also explores the blacklisting of media outlets like Jim Sterling for fear of negative reviews, and the jaded attitude of gamers who expect companies to misrepresent their games just because they've already done it so much. He talks about how people will actually criticize you for thinking that something at E3 is what the game is going to be like at launch. And that's true, and it's kind of scary when you realize how this all plays into the big picture. Once again, I'd love to hear your perspective, whether you agree or disagree. If you enjoyed this video, remember to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe for new videos here on my channel almost every single day. You can follow me on Twitter at JV2017 if you want to stay up to date on my videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.